what does Art Vandelay do? This is a reference to Seinfeld.
Vandelay Industries. I think they're importers.
So that brings us to the topic of today, importing of legacy contracts. I'm personally not a fan of the word legacy, but that's what it's used in the industry. But what we mean by legacy contracts are contracts that you have written or created in other systems, and they have to be imported into your new CLM system. So we're going to focus specifically on the process that we follow to bring legacy contracts into Agiloft.
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle here is easing the anxiety of a client that looks at how vast this actual task is that they have to perform on behalf. I mean, you think about a company that has generated contracts, they've been in business for years and years. They're going to have documents scattered all over the place. They're going to have Word documents and PDFs on shared network drives. You're going to find documents on people's workstations. They might have an existing contract management system in place today that's more of a repository, just as a storage, electronic storage unit for documents. And how do they get their hands on all this stuff in order to put into a state-of-the-art CLM like Agiloft?
Yeah.
And here's another Agiloft task that is incredibly important. Before go live is making sure that not only you're building the process, for today's needs, but how do you handle the tens of thousands of legacy contracts that you have, and making sure that you can get those accessible within the new platform, within a few months. It's a huge task.
Yeah, I mean, Agiloft uses a term called data first. I mean, this is really your first data.
Yeah, it is your first data.
It's the first data that gets put in.
Exactly.
And I think part of what the process that we follow, right? Again, this could be a tedious process, and different people start from different levels. Different people have different level of organization, right? Different systems. So the process that we follow, it's like a multi-step. First thing is to plan and identify what needs to be imported.
Well,
right?
Also the scope. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of clients will have a legacy contract, but then they'll also have a lot of these supporting documents, email history and chains and things. And it's like, okay, if you're putting this document into a new system, do you need the emails that actually you actually used in order to help negotiate that contract? Yeah. I think at that point is, it's just making the call. The only asset there is the contract itself. Many of these legacy contracts are already expired. They're already, they've been in a terminated state. Yeah. But you want to maintain that historical growth within your business. You want to say, okay, I had a contract with this company 15 years ago. Here's the old contract. Being able to look through an old document to see if you've got an in perpetuity CDA in place. Who knows? But at least you can reference those legacy contracts in order to make a decision on whether or not you want to continue with that company today, expand their contract profile today, or whatever you need to do. But I think helping the client identify what is the asset from the legacy perspective is all part of the planning there.
Yeah,
too.
So that's sort of like the first step. We want to make sure if there's stuff that you just have, you don't want to move it forward, you archive it in some other system, and use Agiloft as the first set of data that you're going to load. Second thing we look at is exporting that data. And I can the exporting of the data is the physical movement of the data into a place where we can import it, right? So we have seen many different scenarios. In some cases, they're like Andy mentioned, it's sitting on their computers, SharePoint, Box,
Anyway.
a lot of other storage systems. In some cases, we have seen that they're not readily exportable. We have some systems that people are using which don't give you the facilities to export. So this is where our integration heads, we put together and our integration skills that we have to pull that data out, right?
Actually,
Getting
I
the
like to use the
metadata
word.
out, getting the PDF files out, getting all that into stuff that we can easily organize.
I like to use the word declutter. I mean,
Yep.
we're getting in there and getting what you need to be out of there. I mean, there's a lot of clutter in a lot of the legacy systems.
Yeah.
One of the big things that we do is we help companies migrate from one CLM to another CLM. So, I think you hit it right on the head. Some systems are more flexible to get data out, and some of them are incredibly rigid. And I think we've seen both instances there as to what as to what that end scope is going to look like.
Yeah. And we've used many different techniques, to do that, all the way from, using sophisticated software to pull data to, hey, give me export access and we will pull data in pieces, run reports. So there's many different ways to do it. The good news, it's doable. In some cases, it's tedious, but it's very doable.
Well, it's also the one task that always just seems to have a check mark at the end, because you start and you finish. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you have either 5,000 contracts and you start with contract number 1 and you end at 5,000,
Yep.
or you've got 150,000 contracts. But you complete the task.
Correct.
We've never not had a legacy contract procedure go as planned. And I think, when we look at talking with a client, making them feel comfortable that that they can do it, that we have easy ways to make the process more simpler. We can offer assistance if we have to. I think one of the things that you were going to mention is that we have the ability to either electronically pull the data out or manually read every document one at a time,
whatever it takes,
and then log all of the pertinent information. Who the counterparty is, the contract type, the start date, the end date, the type of contract that it is. There's so many variables that you need to extract. For that to be a valid record within your CLM.
I mean, there's many tools available, in our tool shed to help the client with this. So I think just want to make sure that, the only requirement that we, have our clients do is start this process early.
Yeah.
When the project kicks off, initiate another work stream that will go find this data. We client usually assigns somebody, or we, provide our resource to help you find that content and then put it into a place where at least we can take a look at it.
Yeah.
And when we look at it is when we go to the next step, which is the cleanup.
Well, here's where we looking at it, we take just as much care of looking at it as we do processing it. If you think about it, all your legacy contracts have all the history of your company. Mm-hmm. You've got so much intellectual property that's proprietary to your company in these contracts. You potentially have very sensitive HR contracts. You've got maybe board of director contracts in there. You've got financial information. We treat these contracts as though it is the most sensitive information you have. So much so that we never are in possession of it on our own machines. We actually will build the virtual instance of a workstation to be able to process your documents. So we will transfer your actual documents to this virtual instance. So when we do the imports into Agiloft, we're not physically touching the documents. So there is an accountability of and traceability of handling.
Absolutely.
And by us putting those documents on a VM, and we've had clients with 75,000 plus legacy documents. Our throughput doing the input or on the import, we're able to get anywhere from up to 10 to 15,000 imports per 12-hour day.
Wow.
So looking at that throughput, we can we can actually process the import of that data within a long weekend usually.
Yeah.
And we usually will wait to do this, prior to go live. We want your system completely cleaned out of all the test data, and our process is tight.
And I think one of the things
really
we
tight.
run into is the the garbage in, garbage out. You guys, you must have heard. It's essentially saying that information that we are about to put in, it has to be top-notch quality, right? So
Has
you
to
have
be clean.
examples of companies, and I think you always talk about it. That your IBM example. You want to talk about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, over the years, if you have a contract, and the analogy is the company IBM. It's either called International Business Machines, it's I period, B period, M period, or it's IBM. And if you've got all three of those names uniquely individual within your metadata of your contract records, technically you've got three different counterparties. So I think part of the discovery on the legacy data generation is normalizing those differences. We see a lot of differences in how states are characterized. Like the word South Carolina spelled out versus SC. Technically, those are two different data points within a state analogy.
Yeah.
So it's cleaning up that stuff. Country codes versus, United Kingdom versus the UK.
Yeah.
We see that a lot. And I think part of what we do is help normalize all of those inaccuracies within the data that's collected out of the contracts.
Yeah, and that brings us to the next point, which is the mapping. So now in AgileOps, we have a metadata that, in the future, this is what things will be called. So if you have a contract called Statement of Work or SOW or whatever else you guys want to refer it, we want to standardize that. This is where the mapping exercise comes in. This is where we get in and we map, like Andy was explaining, standardize your codes for your country, for your customers, customer types, contract types, country codes, currency, all of these things that can make the quality of your data a lot richer. Then you can use it for reporting, you can use it on dashboards, you can use it to integrate with other systems. So all of that is part of the mapping exercise that we go through. It sometimes is painful, but it's a very necessary step. That's why I think, I'll repeat that we have to start this process early. It takes a lot of effort. And then comes the fun part. That's the loading. I think we already discussed the
the loading is
part, right?
is a button click.
Yep, button click, but we have to plan that out. If you have 150,000 contracts, it doesn't happen in one shot. Right. There's a little bit of organization that we do to make sure that we will put in the first batch, have you quality check it, do the next batch. Sometimes it's an iterative process. If something didn't load right, we've got to load it again. So again, we give it enough time so we have flexibility on making sure that we get it done in time. But at the same time, with the guiding principle is that the data quality has to be there.
Well, right? And I think, we're not talking anything unique.
Correct.
But I think one of the things that we've been able to do is to ease the anxiousness of a client in embarking on this task. There's not been a scenario, I don't think, that we have uncovered that we haven't been shocked by.
True.
So, it's a task at the end of the day. We're very comfortable, I think, facilitating and coordinating that. We can act in any role that you need us to act in within this particular sub project. So I do feel that there's a lot of human comfortability that we bring to the table by just having a lot of successes doing this.
Yeah, and I think part of it is the last step is this is where our client comes in, right? When we involve them, we want to make sure that when we do test the system, part of the testing is to test the data as well. Yeah. Make sure everything got mapped correctly. Make sure the names are cleaned up, right? Make sure, and that is also sometimes an iterative step, but it's a very necessary step, part of the user acceptance testing. This is when the owner of the system is saying, now this is mine.
Yeah.
And part of what they're getting is the software itself, the process that was built, and the data that was imported.
All of their history.
All of their history.
All of their history
the crown jewels are in there. So you want to make sure that it's all polished and nice. So I mean it's a process. It's very doable. It could be stressful. So I think only way to reduce that stress is to give it enough time, because you will hit certain unknowns. That's the one part of this process is there are unknowns, but with the level of different types of contracts that we have seen, we're able to bring them in and get you going on day one.
And we also know where the imports are going to fail, and I don't want anybody to think like if an import fails you have to do it all over again. The nice thing about Agiloft is when you process an import, what's good goes. So if I'm processing 10,000 records, 9,500 of them might go clean, and I'm only now worrying about the 500 that failed. So I've got 9,500 already in, and now I'm just cleaning up bits and pieces of data on 500 contracts. I'll run it again for the 500, and I might have 20 come out remaining. So it's always a delta import. What goes good, and then what fails, you know exactly where it failed, you know exactly where the data point was missing, and it's a lot easier to clean up.
I mean, you brought up the term good. Now let's talk about the good, bad, and ugly, right? So the one thing, a lesson learned is there are times when one of the features that's built into this data is how things are connected to each other. How an MSA or a CDA is connected to an SOW.
Parent-child relationship.
Parent-child relationship is something that we build as part of this import. So we want to make sure that not only is the document imported, but the connectivity that Agiloft gives you of the document, which has played a lot of role in, you're looking at a data holistically. We want to make sure that that's loaded. However, the bad is we require sometimes people to make that connectivity. Right. If you don't have good metadata, you don't know, which a particular amendment is linked to which MSA, which version of the MSA. So things get a little hazy there, but I think we have techniques to help you, resolve that.
Yeah, and we also see the problem where there's been turnover, within a company, and a lot of the people that generated contracts 10 years ago are not there today.
True.
To even provide a guidance or insight as to the organization of that particular contract. So they're relying upon, possibly a folder structure. They have a counterparty name, and then they have the MSA as a subdirectory, then they have the SOW as a subdirectory, then they have amendments as a subdirectory. And in trying to equate a directory structure to a relational database, parent-child association, that's definitely part of the pain is creating those parent-child relationships.
Yeah. So I think that's sometimes become the bad or the ugly.
Right.
But the good part is you could still load the data and put those relationships later. So in some places we have seen that we load the data and then they hire somebody temporary to kind of dig through the history and make that connectivity. Right. So we could still achieve the dates that we promise, and with some work as part of either hypercare or phase 2. So again, tedious process, very doable, hard at times, but with our experiences and scars, we can help people do it. And Agiloft has some good import tools and techniques that are pretty solid that helps us in this. So.
But I think our closing remark here is this task is it's a comfortable task to complete from our perspective. Like I said, we haven't had an import issue in all of the implementations that we've done, and I think that speaks for itself. Yeah,
and I think as long as the net lesson is make it a day one task. Let it run. If you can, and
people in planning.
people in planning.
People in
so
planning,
that's all it takes. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care.